But there's no doubt that the Prime Minister has not stood strong against this idiocy from France. He should have called it out, particularly after Macron called him a liar. Because I've got to ask you this. What would Paul Keating have done? What would Keating have done had Macron or anyone called him a liar? Sit there and take it? I think not. I think not. But this is the best that Morrison could do, to pretend that Macron wasn't really talking about him, but the rest of us.
I've got broad shoulders, I can deal with that. But those slurs, I'm not going to cop sledging of Australia.
And that's not the first time that I've wondered whether or when Morrison will get some courage and conviction into his politics. And now I give him a big tick for standing up to China. That's been very important. But on the culture wars, Scott Morrison has gone missing. He told me once he wasn't interested. I wonder if he quite understands them. Because not being interested in them, that's a huge mistake for any Conservative politician. Because the culture wars are coming for them. They're coming for them, don't you worry. And in the election in Virginia, the US this week, we saw Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin actually beat frontrunner Democrat Terry McAuliffe by actually now fighting back. Now, probably Youngkin's knockout blow came when he was debating this McAuliffe. Youngkin was talking about the parents who were outraged by some books that woke teachers were now pushing onto their kids, this race war stuff and all that. And McAuliffe, in the arrogance of his response, just blew up his own campaign.
What we've seen over the course of the last 20 months is our school systems refusing to engage with parents. In fact, in Fairfax County this past week, we watched parents so upset because there was such sexually explicit material in the library. You believe school systems should tell children what to do. I believe parents should be in charge of their kids' education.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Parents shouldn't have a say in how their own kids are taught. The arrogance of the left. No wonder parents went nuts. But listen, doesn't that exactly sum up the left now? They're such bullies. Natural party of the bullies. Democrats there, the Greens here, Labor. Whatever they're selling, you've got to shut up and take it or else. And if you've got a problem with it, if you don't like, for instance, their new race politics, particularly the stuff that's now increasingly being pushed on kids, there's no discussion about it. You must be a racist, right? And that was McAuliffe's second biggest blunder in this campaign. To lie about what his schools were actually teaching, particularly on race politics, and to call parents racist for not shutting up about it.
How do you define critical race theory?
I answer this question very clearly. It's not taught in Virginia, and it's never been taught in Virginia. And as I've said this a lot, it's a dog whistle. It's racial, it's division, it's racist. It's a dog whistle.
But even some Democrats with children weren't putting up with this craziness, preaching race politics in schools and then lying about it. And for some parents of colour, like Azra and Amani, to have McAuliffe just dismiss them as racist proved he was a liar.
I am a Muslim woman of color, and I am telling you, we are not white supremacists. If this is what a white supremacist looks like, then you need to go back. You need to get a time out. All of you need a time out.
In the end, a lot of women voters in particular who voted Democrat last time voted Republican this time. Mothers. The culture wars can win Conservatives elections. You just need courage, you need intelligence, and you need calm, not hysteria, to do it. Well, could Scott Morrison manage all that? Joining me is John Roskam, head of the Institute of Public Affairs. John, it's always great to talk to you. Scott Morrison has run from the culture wars, I think it's fair to say. He's given in on global warming, he's given in on race politics, he's given in on reforming the ABC. He said very little about free speech, except at universities, which is good, that's good. Is this failure a mistake?
Well, it is, Andrew. I think for too long, Liberals have recoiled, have been afraid to fight the so-called culture wars. I don't even like the term culture wars. They're debates about our principles, about what we stand for as a country, and there are debates about our values. And exactly as you said, the point of what happened in Virginia a few days ago is not just that a Republican won the position of governor. Virginia is a state that went by 10% to Joe Biden. It is a thoroughly Democratic state. And exactly as you said, a Republican who said parents should decide what's taught in schools, who said that we shouldn't be divided by critical race theory and cultural Marxism, won. And this is now not just a retrospective analysis. The exit polls from the election show that the economy was the number one issue, and then by a long way it was education, and education cut across gender boundaries, cultural boundaries. And here in Australia, we have exactly the same debate coming. We have a national curriculum, as we've spoken about, Andrew, that basically teaches young children to hate their country. And Scott Morrison, and Alan Tudge, to his credit, is starting to stand up on this. Scott Morrison needs to understand questions of values and principles are core at the mind of voters.
Now, you mentioned this, and I would put this as number one. I've asked for 3 wars Scott Morrison should fight. The culture war in the schools, and actually it's launched by the left. I'm talking really about defence against them. Hate your country, it's all woe, environmental destruction, genocide, colonialism, oppression, shame, shame, shame. And we should change the Australia. This has been in schools. And yes, there's a new curriculum, which was absurd. Give the Education Minister, Alan Tudge, a little tick for fighting back so far, not completely yet, but fighting back. What has Scott Morrison said? This should be absolutely front and centre, should it not?
Well, it absolutely should be, Andrew. And Australians need to know that Scott Morrison is going to back his Education Minister. And the curriculum is worse than you describe it. The curriculum is not balanced. There are black marks on Australian history, absolutely. But we are a great, successful democracy that millions of people have come to and have been welcomed. If you look at the national history curriculum, as has been proposed, there is literally not one single positive mention of Australia. Now, anyone coming to Australia would find that absolutely unable to be believed, but this is what young children are being taught. The simplest way for Scott Morrison to say enough is enough is to say that the principle of the national curriculum will be abandoned, that parents, just as in the rest of the world, parents will have say and decide what their children should be taught. And he should now put it on Labor, exactly as the Republicans did in Virginia, to say, do you support this? In my state of Victoria, the Education Minister has said, leave it to the experts. Now, the experts are importing cultural Marxism to the next generation.
There you go, right there. We could do exactly the same right here and to a very good purpose. What would be another battle? For me, I would say resisting the new apartheid, like the idea that we're so different by race, so torn by race, that Aborigines have got to have their own kind of parliament, which we're seeing moves in Victoria for that. We're seeing Labor back a move federally for that. I would say that that is another critical issue that the Prime Minister should not be giving in on. I mean, there's been a minor resistance, but not enough by any means in changing our constitution to divide us by race. Your thoughts?
Well, that's exactly right, Andrew. And I'd go further. It's not about Scott Morrison saying something negative. It is about Scott Morrison saying, in this country, this liberal democracy that is the great country we live in, we are all equal. It doesn't matter what your gender, what your sexuality, what your race, what your ethnic background is. We have the same legal rights, and that means we all get a say. No one's better than us, and we're better than no one else. And what Scott Morrison has to understand is these are deep cultural, important values that are coming to the fore. The left has tried to rip us asunder, exactly as you said. This is a culture war, not started by the centre-right, not started by liberals and conservatives. It was started by the left, emerging from universities and their theories in the 1960s. And Scott Morrison can't just be negative and critical about it. He has to say, this is what I stand for. And Scott Morrison still has a chance. He has the opportunity to walk back from what he said a few years ago when he said, free speech doesn't create a single job. He now has the opportunity to say, at a time of international turmoil and trouble, there are more things that unite Australians than divide us, and he's not going to allow us to be divided.
I think just in the last bit of your answer, you gave the issue number 3 he should fight on, and it is free speech. Absolutely. I mean, again, he's left the reforms of Free Speech University first to Dan Tehan, who was as Education Minister, and then to Alan Tudge, who replaced Dan Tehan. They've done fairly well in getting the university to commit to free speech, but this should be the Prime Minister's push. He has to be identified with values, and he doesn't seem to be a man who seems comfortable with that. I find it quite tragic. John Roskam, the IPA, you've done a brilliant job in trying to advance these issues. Thanks so much for your time.